Welcome to the show. We're talking about the Michigan Future Business Index Survey today. The newest survey shows that positive perceptions of the state business economy have reached an all-time high, but we do see a slight uncertainty building in future sales and profits projections. We're going to show the results of the survey and talk about how employers are feeling. The Small Business Association of Michigan is always working on entrepreneurship-led economic development. Brian, why is this important?
Well, this is really important because it's what drives our economy today. Some people would be surprised to know that most employment in Michigan, both our growth in employment and current employment, is from companies that have fewer than 100 employees. So entrepreneurs are the ones who create the jobs. And so our mission here is to make sure that small businesses can operate on the same footing that a big business would. And entrepreneurship-led economic development is about all the different players, all the different organizations in the outside of government like SBAM, like the Small Business Association of Michigan, but also the governmental agencies that are responsible for economic development, that they're really focused on having a suite of services that help a small business to have all the tools and the resources that a big business would have to go out there and turn their plans into action. So a few examples would be, sometimes a company needs to make that leap to e-commerce. It's different than just having a website, or maybe they're going to make their first export sale. And how do you go through a customs process, or maybe it's market data and sophisticated analytics about a market you're considering entering. That type of information, economic development that gives businesses the information, tools, and resources that they need in order to be successful. It's our best way forward because that is where our jobs come from.
Excellent information. Also, you, as the Small Business Association of Michigan, your heart is really in that support and help for business owners. You offer a varying degree of memberships. Can you talk about those?
We have several levels of membership, those that are VIP members that are really active and utilize a lot of our services, all the way to starter members that it's free. We provide information, a lot of background that business owners need in order to make sure they stay in compliance and operate the best way.
Great. You can just get your free membership at sfam.org. I'm Lisa Smith, and this is Focus on Business. Here with me today is Chris Holman and Rob Fowler. Chris, the Michigan Business Network has been conducting the Michigan Future Business Index Survey for over 10 years.
Yes.
And this really helps business and community leaders address the changing needs of small businesses. Can you first tell us what is this index survey?
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's been around in some form for over 20 years, but when we moved it to a statewide index, we put an M on the front, which made fewer people hang up, because it used to be, this is the FBI calling, right? So now we're the MFBI, Michigan Future Business Index, and the beauty of this thing is it really is a random survey representing geographic and different industries in proportion of what the circumstance has been for the last 6 months. So it gives you a good feeling for how they're doing economically, and also what they project they're going to be doing and how they feel about the future. And so there's always good information that comes out of that. And as you know, with small businesses, how you project and how you feel about the next 6 months has a lot to do with how you spend and how you conserve. And we see little changes in this all the time. But it is a survey, a wide survey of all the businesses to make sure people understand the reality of their circumstance. And we conduct it every 6 months. It is conducted by a company called Insight ROI, and they've been doing it for many years, the same individual, and now he owns his own company. And we want to applaud it, the Accident Fund Insurance Company of America, because they've underwritten it for all those years, and truly without that underwriting, it probably couldn't come off. But I think it's a very good index for people to utilize. And Rob, you could probably speak to that, because I think probably the membership in SBAM finds it of value.
Well, I think for us, it is a great finger on the pulse of small business. It's an opportunity to understand what's going on in small businesses, what their intents are as they look forward for 6 months what their concerns are as they look about their current environment. I would say we've watched the concerns of small business literally change over the 10 years, from a concern when the economy was worse to on things like health insurance and the cost of health insurance, finding customers, to, as the economy got better, access to capital, more recently to access to talent and the things that come along with access to talent. That really is the issue for small businesses today. And I think it's helped us respond to it. I think it's helped policymakers respond to the needs of small business as they see these things change.
So as the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan, which, by the way, is the largest small business organization in the country with 28,000 members, very proud to be a member. What are some of the things that SBAM has responded to as a result of seeing what's in this survey?
Well, I think it's, again, over time, our literal policy agenda has had to change as we understand the changing needs of small business. So, for example, this issue of talent, you would have seen the state responding to a skills gap. Literally, we had a high unemployment rate and jobs going unfilled at the same time, and that was because there was a gap in the skills of those who were available in the workplace. Today, I think you see if people have bought into the narrative that the economy's not good in Michigan or it's not a good place to find a job, I think they are wrong, and I would like to sort of bust that narrative a little bit, because the truth is employers are looking for people today. If you are disabled, I would say this is probably the best time in your life to look for a job. I think if you have a felony background, this is probably the best time in your life to look for a job. The labor market is very tight, and I think the public policy has responded to that. So that's an example of the sort of things, as you understand the needs of small business, you can begin to put some things in place. Now, it's not just us from a program standpoint, it's the entire state of Michigan. So we need our community colleges and our education system and our workforce development system to be responsive to these things. So part of our job is to be the voice for small business to say these things are changing and we really have to pay attention to them.
Yeah. Rob makes a really good point in how this has changed and how it can change policy. I remember 7 of these ago, which is 3.5 years, number one issue was access to capital. If you remember, the banks were under heavy regulation at the time and there was not money available. And that was the number one issue. And the number 2 issue, I think, was government regulation. And number 3 was probably health care. And government regulation, that's not fair because it's been in the top 5 since 1776, I think. But the fact is that you prepare for that policy-wise very differently than what it says today, which is the talent issue that you're talking about and how we confront that talent issue. And sometimes it's almost arithmetic. There's not enough people in the workforce available, let alone the skill matchup. And so we have more people leaving the workforce than are coming into the workforce. So what we wind up doing in many cases is stealing from each other. And that's not really a solution. That makes somebody healthy for a short period of time. So that's the value, I think, of seeing these statistics and how they reflect on policy.
Yeah.
So what is Michigan doing to alleviate these problems?
Well, I think let's talk about a couple of the problems specifically. So talent, we've talked about a little bit. Recently passed was something called the Marshall Plan for Talent, and it was a series of grants given to local talent organizations, so workforce development agencies, community colleges, schools, to be serious about matching skills with need. The health insurance is an interesting one to me. It's been in the top 5 virtually for the entire time of this.
That's correct.
Because it's such it's a high cost for small businesses. So there has been an interesting policy response to that recently. Trump administration created something called association health plans. It's been talked about in concept for a long time, allowing small businesses to come together and pool their buying power and maybe get a deal they couldn't get by themselves. So strength in numbers kind of a concept. The Department of Labor created a set of rules, And we today at the Small Business Association of Michigan have partnered with another organization to create what I believe right now is the largest association health plan in the country. We just launched it in January. And it seems to be a real solution for some small businesses. So the idea of pooling together, getting a better deal, using that buying power to have a little leverage in the marketplace like large companies often have, was a policy solution, but ultimately it took a sort of a program to be built around it. And I'm pleased to say that it's called Transcend, and that Transcend Association Health Plan has been, I think, a real solution to a need identified early on in the Future Business Index.
Well, and this is the beauty. This is how it responds on my side of the ledger, which is the small business. How do you react when you have this information, when you know there's this talent shortage, and how are you going to compete? Because it's always harder for small businesses to compete for the talent, right? And they are that sector that at one time kind of went away from healthcare and providing it, maybe gave employees a raise and said go to the exchange or whatever the case may be. Now they're back to where you have to have it as an incentive to get the people that you want to get. Yeah. And so this is a good manifestation of exactly what these statistics show. And your response to this, by the way, is much appreciated in the small business community.
Good.
It really is.
Okay, so there's some by the way, you can get this survey.
You go online, MichiganBusinessNetwork.com, and scroll through our website, yeah.
Yeah.
Or get the app for your phone, sorry. Didn't mean to do.
The app for your phone ad.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of overall things that emerge from the survey. Wage growth is up, hiring is up, and yet profits have basically stayed flat since 2016.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because there's a reason for that, by the way, and you can, again, it's arithmetic. You can figure it out dollar-wise. But with this competition for talent, so what happens? Your revenues may go up, but now you have to spend more for the talent. So that eats away at the bottom line. And I have to say that the confidence in our economy in Michigan, in the business community, is at an all-time high. They are so enthused about how things are going. This is the first time we've seen creep into these statistics apprehension. We know this is the longest recovery we've had in a long, long time here, and so naturally you start saying, when does the other shoe drop? It doesn't dampen your enthusiasm, but maybe you do some little things that are preparatory for that, right? And so we've seen that feel of it. One of the concerns now for small business, and I'll give you the top 3 or 4. First one is talent, absolutely. Second one is growth. And let me tell you what they mean by growth. And this is where the danger of the talent situation comes in. They mean we can't grow without talent. Now you're looking at an economic inhibitor. So our economy is not growing at the speed it can if it had the talent to fill those gaps. So small business can't grow. Healthcare has crept back into one of the top 3 and the cost of that. And that's why your solution is so timely. Businesses have to have a place to go where it's affordable. The other thing they worry about a little bit, because when you survey small businesses, is customers. Where do we go get more customers? How do we get new customers? And a lot of that comes into what the new marketing. You know, I mean, I can remember when I first started in an industry, you went out and it was a 3 Manhattan lunch, and nobody went back to work, but you signed a contract. Now, with social networking and everything else you can do through the internet, it has really changed, and there are more people out there who are technicians selling to other technicians as opposed to professional salespeople. So a lot of it has changed in that regard. The wage inflation is now becoming a problem because it's eating away at that bottom line, which is what you just talked about.
Well, and I would say for a lot of people, if you hear wage inflation is a problem, it's only a problem if you're the employer.
Yeah.
That's good news for Michigan. It's really good news for Michigan. The truth is wages are going up, poverty is going down. A lot of things are really headed in the right direction. Unemployment is way down. So good news for Michigan, but the truth is if you're a small business owner trying to compete with big companies and anybody else in your lane, you really do have to be competitive with wages and benefits in order to do that. And I think that's what's risen to the top here is a really tight labor market has created this set of issues that we didn't have 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And that's, again, speaks to this sort of changing need of the small business community. I will say that one of the things that I find interesting about this is Chris has mentioned this sort of creeping in some uncertainty. And if there's one thing business doesn't like, it's uncertainty. And I think, for example, one of the things they mentioned is the tariffs. So it's kind of not the Michigan scene as much as it is the national scene that I think some of our small businesses are more concerned about. And so what's happening with the national economy, what's happening, tariffs were the specific thing that was mentioned, but not that there are storm clouds on the horizon, but there's uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, I think you hold back on investing, you hold back on hiring, and I think one of the things that happens in an economy naturally, or the economic cycle, is it can become self-fulfilling. That is, it can be that people think something bad is going to happen, so they start to pull back, and in the pulling back, they make something bad happen. So I think part of what we all ought to be paying attention to is there's no reason for people to pull back necessarily, but uncertainty. And that's the thing that has started to show up in the survey.
That is such a great point, because we've hacked this around for years, and the fact is it can become, because what happens when you have apprehension, like I said before, let's take it to the Ma and Pa Kettle Street level. Okay, so all of a sudden I'm feeling, profits are flat, but revenue is good. I feel good about everything. Had to give a little wage increase here, and that's why profits are flat. But I'm just a little worried. We're like on year 12 of this recovery, and they just don't go this far. I think I'll order a little less inventory and maybe cut Bob's hours back here, right? And so what happens, like you said, as you pull back, now all of a sudden you start slowing. You may sell out of your inventory, but you didn't buy enough to make that additional profit because you weren't enthused about the future. And that happens on all levels. The reason that things like the tariffs came into play is because, like you say, they look for some reason to be apprehensive. And that is one of them. If you are in the steel industry, and if you're hearing, my next car is going to cost me an extra, $2,000, $3,000 because of the cost of steel and the tariffs, you start saying to yourself, well, that's the cost of doing business. So that's going to eat away at my bottom line. So there, again, is a little apprehension. And you are right on when you say business hates apprehension. They hate uncertainty. You can't project if you're not certain about what tomorrow's policy is.
It feels to me, when I talk to business owners, like the pendulum swinging back a little bit is not so much about things that will actually affect the bottom line. So let me explain what I mean by that. I'm a little apprehensive, and yet I need to attract and retain talent, so I'm keeping wages up, or wages are growing, but maybe I don't get that new copier or the new truck for the company, and yet my employees are still making money, I'm still making money, I know I need to find new markets, new customers. That feels to me like where the pendulum is swinging back a little bit. It feels a little less ominous for me than if I had to cut wages, cut hours, cut
I think
benefits.
That's right. I think part of what you do when you can't find enough people to do the work you have is you stop looking for you don't fill your pipeline with new customers. And I think there's a little bit of that, and that becomes the sort of the thing that governs your growth is, being a little bit afraid of that next contract, not knowing whether you could actually fulfill and satisfy your customers. And so I agree. I think it is not nearly as ominous as an economy that's just going over the edge. It feels more like one that's going to slow down a little bit when we don't know, how deep we don't know, to what extent. But there's a lot of really, I'm not an economist, but I've been around small business for 35 years, and I think you can sort of watch the cycle. This one feels to me like it's different for the reasons you just mentioned. There's great optimism among small businesses. Yeah. So, against the backdrop of great optimism and satisfaction with the Michigan business climate, you see some trepidation.
And for Michigan, the survey really suggests that manufacturing and construction are continuing to make capital improvements, which is great news for Michigan.
Well, this is interesting because statistically we speak to, this is part of that pulling back thing. One of the things we've seen in the last two is a flattening, not a decline, but a flattening of projected equipment, projected expansion. So they're flat. So they're like, maybe I'll just hold on that for a while and see how it goes, right? And again, this is kind of the pullback that we're talking about. And training.
Yeah, I was going to say the interesting part to me is, while it's flat, it is flat at a fairly high level of investment in machinery and equipment. In other words, they've slowed down, but they're still doing it. 25% said that they expect to invest in machinery and equipment and training in the next 6 months.
And hiring and
yeah.
Thank you so much for the survey, Chris. It's fascinating information. It informs so many positive roads for so many of us, including SBAM. I'm absolutely not going to call this a bubble. I don't think we're there. I think it's just a little bit of pendulum swinging back, but the pendulum most certainly still is in the positive side for Michigan and for business as a whole. Thank you so much for being here.
We agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Okay, today we are talking all about business growth. This is about where we're at and where we're going. Can you tell us a couple of ways that you see technology having a positive impact on business growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from the obvious things like productivity and cost savings, the one big thing is small companies can deploy technology and really become successful because they can compete with the big guys. You can open a small coffee shop, for example, and put some technology in there, and you're just competing with the small guys. But if you want to compete with someone who's selling stuff worldwide, you can do that by using the right technology. You can have a website to attract customers. Doesn't take that much. You can sell your stuff through Amazon. You can take lots of different steps and look bigger than you are. It could be a 3-person company working out of your garage and look very big.
So it's really about having some kind of a vision about technology then?
Correct. So what I see happening is companies will deploy technology ad hoc. They'll say, oh, this sounds like the right thing to do, and they'll do it. Then they'll say, this sounds like the right thing, they'll do it. Then they grow bigger and they go, oh, we need to change that, so let's move it over here. What I'd like to see people do is start with the big vision. Start with where are they going. If you want to open or have an office in 50 locations, start to build your technology so that it will scale. And when you get to 50, you didn't have to change it 6 times along the way. So that's very important. And to just stick with that vision and get the right people in the room. So it's not just a department head saying, I want to deploy this technology or I want to do that thing. It's get all those team of people in the room, or get a single leader who's going to have the vision to go, all of this stuff needs to work together. And when you do that, you'll be very successful.
Oh, great. I'm in. I think that's a terrific bit of information for me. We'll see you next week on Focus on Technology.
Thanks.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
Thanks for being here, Joe. Have some question about, based on the current business climate, what role can bankers play to help small business owners?
Banks play a really vital and positive role for small businesses. Community bankers truly take the time to listen to their customers and craft a solution for them that really fits their need, whether or not they're trying to expand their business, trying to become more efficient. Your local banker is the one that's going to take the time to listen to you and come up with the correct solution for what you're trying to accomplish.
Can you give us some specifics about how we might leverage these relationships?
Yes, right now is a great time for a customer to really review both their deposit accounts and their loan accounts. There's been a tremendous amount of innovation the last 4 or 5 years in terms of account features that are available, things like mobile applications for businesses, positive pay fraud avoidance, and on top of that, it is a great time to talk to your banker about accessing capital because interest rates are really low, sales are up for lots of people, there's very good business trends. It's never been a better time to look for capital from your local bank to expand your business.
So I believe that some bankers have something called a checkup. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would just it'd be a great idea for a local business to go into their local bank with a couple of months of checking account statements and say, this is what I've been doing for the last few years. What's available now? Do I have all the appropriate features for my account based on my business?
Excellent.
And your local banker is the one that's going to help you with that.
Great. I'm free next Tuesday for a checkup, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you then.
Sounds
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Focus on Banking, brought to you by Michigan Bankers Association.
Businesses are reporting hiring, great sales, expansion. Can you tell us what some of the risks are during these growth periods?
Well, one of the bigger risks is thinking that you're a small business, first of all. I've always said that the biggest mistake a small business makes is thinking that it's a small business. You need to pretend that you are a large business from day one and set your infrastructure, and that is where you're going to manage all of your risk. One of the best ways to do that, and this is, I guess, where I give a shout out to my profession, is having an attorney as soon as possible. You want to be able to concentrate on your business growing and expanding, and you don't want to be looking for a good attorney to review your contracts while you're trying to negotiate a contract. You want to be able to have an accountant around you to look at the tax implications of your new lease in your bigger building and that kind of thing. So I think that as long as we are expanding our businesses, we always have to have an eye on the sort of business professional support structure we have around us, and an attorney is an essential component of that. Particularly business lawyers, we are always thinking about your risks so that you can relax and run your core business and grow.
Great. So as an owner, you're in growth phase, you have your crew together, your accountant, your attorney, the people that you depend on. And in growth phases, it seems that what I'm hearing is the budget gets to sort of mushroom. It gets big. You start paying more and more professional legal fees. Do you have any advice for owners that are experiencing that?
I do. You know, it's wonderful to have a great team around you, but when you are experiencing explosive growth, if you're not getting your calls returned fast enough, or you need more of their time, it's time to start thinking about bringing these people in-house. If you're growing that quickly, and I hope you are, then you need to make sure that you have someone's attention around the clock, and that they are with you all the time and always thinking about you instead of you and their other clients.
Great advice. Bring it in-house.
Right.
Thank you so much, Denise.
You're welcome.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Policella and Associates, PLLC.
Thanks for tuning in. The big takeaway from the Business Index is 78% of employers feel that Michigan is a great place to do business.